Do teams in Major League Baseball actually need to rebuild? Jonesy's here, and we're going to discuss that and a ton more. This is Flashing the Leather. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the next installment of Flashing the Leather. This is the Iceman Matt Freights. That is Jonesy back in the studio to talk some baseball. We are part of the Matty Ice Media Network. We are part of I&C Sports, and it's exciting. The last time we were here, it was May. The season was young, but it is the first day of summer as we are recording this episode, and I couldn't be more excited to have you back in the studio, my man, to talk about some things. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so glad to be back in here.
I'm glad to have you back in here. It's always great for me, just a little aside for the audience. It's always great for me to have people up here because it's like a way to share my passions with other people.
Yeah.
And I said last time that not a lot of people get to do this. And so it's fun to be able to have somebody in here who would dream or never dream about doing something like this. And last time we were very successful. I feel like it was a great launch, a good debut episode, and a lot of people enjoyed it. I know you got to share it with some friends and family who gave you a lot of props, and I'm here to tell you that the audience wants you. You want him to talk about baseball, so that's what we're here to do. Are you prepared to do so?
I totally agree. It is fun, and it's not something everybody does, and it's not something I'd ever dream of doing, and I am definitely happy to be here right now. It is fun.
So you have some personal news, I guess, right? About in the baseball world, your son has taken on a new venture. One of the things we love to do here is talk about family. So Coach, my co-host on Iceman and Coach, he's been coaching under-8 softball and having a great time bonding with his daughter over it. So I would love for you to tell the audience and the listeners all about what you got going on with your son, because I know you're excited even though it's a lot.
Yeah, so you must have known that my son is in an 8U travel competitive baseball league. He's competed in 2 tournaments. The past 2 weekends have completely evaporated as a result of traveling to see doubleheaders 2 days in a row, Saturday, Sunday, 4 games total each day. And they did well. I think they actually are a pretty young team, and they played competition that's definitely tighter, a little bit older, maybe a year older, playing together longer. And they kind of kept up with them. They were tough games, didn't end, they didn't win anything, but it was a great experience, and it was a lot of baseball. And what else can you ask for? Your son's up there making great line drives, making great plays, and bonding as a team. It was fun.
I'm really happy to hear that because my son is not yet old enough to experience that kind of thing, but I played Little League growing up. I'm sure you did as well. And sometimes those are the indelible moments that we have with our parents. And I said that to Coach last time too, that like when our kids are older, hopefully they'll be pulling from memories like that. And they don't have to win those games for them to be memorable. It's the fact that you're there sharing in that experience with them. And I love that stuff. I really do. But I want to ask you, does it give you a better appreciation for how much travel these guys do in the minor leagues and major leagues with all the travel you're doing for this team? I mean, I think it's an undersold portion of being a professional baseball player.
100%. Yeah. I think you asked me at the end of the last episode where the top tough things, and one of those tough things is an appreciation for the travel that goes into these teams, especially in the minor league, like you mentioned. You might be on a bus for hours and hours and hours. And I remember even playing in high school, just traveling to a high school game on a Friday night, and it would be a 2.5-hour drive. And that's when I lived in Mississippi. So you're just surrounded, and there's nothing around. You're just going in a straight road for 2.5 hours, and it's just daunting. But yeah, there's a huge aspect of travel in this game. And just for me this weekend, we traveled about an hour and a half was to Winchester was our longest drive. And that felt a little bit long too. And it's some of the families and coaches actually stayed overnight in a hotel. We decided to drive back. But yeah, that's a part of it. And what do you eat? Your diet. How are you gonna get ready, wake up early, all of that?
Trust me, you just turned 40, I believe. I turned 40 as well. The diet part of your life is like the hardest thing. No matter what I do, I can't seem to take as much weight off as I would like. And it seems like life is always throwing these things at you, which I think is a testament to how a lot of these, specifically minor league players, stay in shape to play baseball as 162 times a year. They're on the road. We all know that they're not making nearly as much as these major league players are. And so it's a testament to them. I think that you have to go through this. I have yet to go through this, but travel teams in general, any parent out there, we just had Father's Day, who is traveling with their kid every single weekend. Kudos to you because you deserve it. So I asked at the top of the show about rebuilding. It's something you and I have talked about, and I believe rebuild is a trigger word for your father, is it not?
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with my dad about rebuilding, and he had some opinions about it, and so did I. They were different, but it kind of opened my mind a little bit about what is there such thing as a rebuild? Should there be such thing as a rebuild for a Major League Baseball team? And the phrase that stuck in my mind is what he said. How are you going to tell your boss that, hey, this year is not going to be our year. We're not going to do it this year. This is a rebuilding year directly to your boss. Might not fly too well for most of us out there.
Not in our professional lives, but when a rebuilding year still adds or I guess makes them richer, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? And I wonder, though, I want to ask you a fundamental question. Do you think that the idea of a rebuild sticks in different people's minds differently based off of the team that they root for or the franchise that they root for? Because I would assume that if you're a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, for instance, that you've heard this term so many times and we've been rebuilding
Yeah.
always to next year. But as a Phillies fan, you rarely do that.
Yeah.
Or at least it seems that way.
There are some teams that seem to be just constantly good, and that goes back to who your ownership is, who your coaches are. It's a total package, but it starts with the leadership of the team and going forth. And like the Cardinals, this is the first year that I've really seen them this bad. They are always good, and the Yankees do seem to be in there. The Phillies, the Dodgers, and even some of the smaller market teams tend to compete. But I do agree that there is something about a rebuilding year for some of these teams. You've got to have the stars aligning on contracts, making sure your new talent comes up at the right time, making sure they're ready, not coming up too soon, properly developed. Or you can splash into the free agent market and spend that big dollar. But then you don't want to waste your free agency spending when your team cohesively is not ready to accept that free agent for that big dollar splash.
Yeah, free agency has been a blessing and a curse. It's been a blessing for the players, obviously, because they can go anywhere and get the maximum amount of money that they should, right? And I think in some ways it's a curse for teams because you're taking a risk. Just because a guy is a lot of talent doesn't necessarily mean he's going to gel with the people that are on the team currently. And we've seen that in every single sport. Baseball is not immune to this and no other sport is immune to it.
True.
But in baseball specifically, these guys who come on the team, I'm thinking superstars, right? They come from a situation that maybe they're playing for a small market team and now you're inserting them with a big contract, big dollars, big expectations to a larger market club that is looking to win. And that's where you see a lot of guys going to New York and failing because the expectations are higher, the market is way different. And when you have that contract, when you get paid, it's great for you, but maybe it's not great for your mental sanity because now you're inserting yourself in this other position. Or
Absolutely.
the opposite of that is you're on a small market club and you're the highest paid guy. So now you are the face of all this failure. Even though you yourself are producing, it's difficult for you to say, well, I'm doing my job because the team stinks.
Yeah, you're kind of ringing a couple bells right there. That sounds a lot like I think it was last year, the year before, where the Texas Rangers acquired Corey Seager. It was a big splash signing for them. He was coming off of a very good year with the Dodgers, and Texas didn't really have a lot going on for themselves at that time. And Corey Seager, when he came, didn't make much of a difference at all on that team. But the Texas Rangers this year are incredible. I don't think that we would have said that they were going to be a below average team. They're a pretty good average team, but they're killing it this year, and they're a fun team to watch. And Corey Seager still doesn't seem to be a big part of that equation, and Jacob deGrom wasn't either. And that's part of that risk part that you were talking about. So he's got TJ surgery, and he's not going to be able to help them win this year.
Which I broke the news to you, I believe, via text message because
you did.
I posed a question to you that we'll have to discuss at length at some other time, but whether he was one of the greatest what-ifs in baseball history. And you're like, yeah, he's blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, he's having TJ surgery. And you're like, oh, never mind. because you said like he's really helping them win and they're a fun team. And I'm like, well, that's over. And he has had so many of those. But I want to ask you also with these franchises that sustain success, I think obviously take out the teams that have a lot of money, disposable income. From what I understand in baseball, the way that marketing works and the way that these markets work in terms of their ad revenue and all that, small market clubs can't really fail when they take these risks. They have to hit a home run if they give out a contract like this. And if they don't, they have to reset. Whereas the Dodgers and the Yankees, the Red Sox even to an extent, can make these signings. They don't work out 100%, and you kind of clear the way for, you maybe have a couple bad seasons, but then you can get right back in it because you have that cash flow coming in.
The next guy.
Yes.
Yeah, the next guy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or you can become a seller. You can try to sell the player and try to acquire a couple draft picks for him, something to a team that's buying. And the Mets come to mind. The Mets are kind of an interesting team this year because, man, they did spend all that money this year. You talk about taking a risk in free agency. Justin Verlander is the guy that I'm thinking about right now. It's kind of sad to say that they might be sellers. And I mean, yes, they could they be buyers? Yes, they could. And they actually have some young guys in their club that they can actually give. But even though we look at the Mets and we see a lot of age, older players, veterans on that team, they actually do have a nice young core that is pretty valuable for their future sustainability. You may not want to completely just. If I'm a Mets fan, I'm thinking to myself, do I want to be a buyer? I don't think I want to mortgage the farm to try to win a championship this year in an already pretty crowded NL East and kind of a crowded NL. There's opportunities for wild card there, but not many. There's 3 extra spots, and right now the NL West looks to be chomping at the bit on that one. They are all looking good over on the West Coast. So, yes, very interesting.
But this is where that sustainability factor comes in because you can go out and spend in free agency. But we saw the Yankees, maybe like 10, 12 years ago where they were big spenders, and then their core was old. So now they had to replenish all of the ranks. And again, it's easier to do that when you can get younger and then get some of these free agents to sort of fill the gaps. But if you don't have that sustainability factor and that cash flow, you need to make sure you're hitting home runs, not just in free agents, but with these prospects too. And so few teams get it right consistently. And it's a lot of the same clubs. And if you look at the Tampa Bay Rays, they're the outlier in this. We talked about this last time. And that's a front office mentality. But my question is why doesn't every front office think this way? Because there's 32 teams in the league? How many of them are genuinely trying to win as much as possible by doing it the right way? And is it a front office mentality of making money? Or is it, I have this cushion of being able to spend money? I think the front office element of it is not thought of nearly as highly as it should be as it comes to the success of these franchises.
The weird part about this year is how some of these teams that are winning right now, and it's been really a roller coaster of a year, the teams that are winning right now are very, very young. The Braves, okay, shocker, they're a good team, not a surprise, but they actually have a lot of young talent. They're going to be around for a long time. Their ace is Spencer Strider. He just came on the scene last year. Most of their young rotation is under the age of 24. Acuna is still actually pretty young, even though he's been in the league for a while. And
is he under 30?
Oh yeah, I think he's under 24.
Okay, I thought so.
It doesn't seem like it though, does it?
No, but they have done something remarkable in that they have also had all this young talent, but they have not had to spend a lot to keep them there either. They've been sort of proactive in keeping them there at a young age, but it's not at the detriment of them making money, right? Like it is in the grander sense, but a guy like Acuna is probably going to hit the market at some point and make a ton of money. But they tried to get them early before that control is lost and they hit arbitration, which is the natural point where people want to get in. So the Braves, that front office mentality of, wow, we have a ton of guys that we hit on. Like the amount of prospects that they either traded for and also got lucky with or hit on because they drafted that have all come up into the majors. They just won a World Series, 2 seasons ago? And they're definitely one of the favorites in the NL this year.
And they will be for years to come. The other point about the Braves is they've taken their young talent and they've taken a different kind of risk and signed the younger player to a smaller team-friendly contract before they hit arbitration. They hit that extension and they locked that player up for a period of time. They did that with Ozzie Albies, their second baseman. They did it recently with Austin Riley, their third baseman. The other one escapes me, but they're signing these guys to a couple, 5 years, $80 million contract, something like that. That's a lot of money for them, but they're not like doing that Aaron Judge signing where they're waiting till they're in their late 20s. They have this body of work behind them, and Aaron Judge can command that dollar. But even Judge was risky. Before Judge had his career year last year, 62 home runs, people were saying, I was one of them thinking it. Why do I want to sign an injury-prone guy that is turning 30 next year and he can play the outfield sometimes? Well, it turns out he's a pretty darn good outfielder. He's an excellent home run hitter, and he's the best hitter in the Yankees right now, and he's on the IL right now, it happens to be, but he's still, he had a big toe injury, but he's still the best hitter in the Yankees, and he'll be back and he'll be able to help them. But yeah, so they're able to do that. The other team and it pains me to say this, the other team that's doing this very, very well right now is the Houston Astros. Very young team. Jeremy Pena last year, excellent shortstop, very exciting player. And so if you can find that, nice balance of making a splash in the free agency, willing to take the risk, signing the team-friendly contract, and bringing up the talent and hitting the mark, you can be successful for a long time.
And I think the other part of that equation for Atlanta specifically is the buy-in from these young guys when they know they could hit the market later and possibly get a lot of money. So it's interesting in that regard because I see free agency a lot of times and it's like our work. If you're promoting somebody for what they're going to do, not what they've already done. But a lot of people think about, well, what have you done for me now? And I'm going to put you in this position. In baseball or in any sport, Aaron Judge hits the market and he's got that body of work you talked about. But then you have to ask yourself, well, with the money that we're going to sign him to, is he going to do that into the future? That's the risk part. So the Braves have basically hedged their bets and said, we're going to get these guys early, hope that they're only going to ascend because a lot of these guys are still just hitting their prime or are on the fringes having just started their prime.
They're in their prime, yeah.
Which has to piss off everybody in the NL East because, as you said, they're going to be there for a while and they don't really have to dip into the big-time funds to get a guy, right? They can lose a Freddie Freeman after winning the World Series and be sad about it because he's the hometown guy. You don't want to lose him. And the next person up. They've got people to sort of fill the roles to the point that they're a great baseball team this year.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And that's the other part that's fascinating because it doesn't happen very often. A lot of times they do wait because they want that control. But why aren't other teams doing that? And I guess, as you pointed out, the Astros are doing it, which makes their cheating scandal even more sad because they don't have to. They have a savvy front office.
It does.
That's the key. But that's the key, man. That's what you need because if you want to be sustainable, and it seems like a lot of these small market teams have ownership that has just reserved themselves to the idea that, well, we'll never compete. So why even try? And that's the wrong attitude, in my opinion. That's what I was so upset about last time that you're like, well, it is what it is. I'm like, no, I don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit out of your control. I think we were talking about the Pirates last time. Is that right? So the Pirates, and I think you can throw the Guardians in there a little bit. They've done better, but the Cleveland Guardians, kind of similar. They just their ownership will routinely not spend money, and they're going to have guys come in, and then I think, like, for instance, the Guardians are actually a pretty decent team this year. They're not in first place, but the AL Central is pretty wide open. The Twins are in first, I think, right now, but they've got a decent. I mean, every pitcher that comes up in that system, their farm system and their coaching staff needs a raise because every pitcher that comes out of Cleveland is lights out. So Shane Bieber's going to be eligible as a free agent soon, and the Cleveland Indians, the Guardians, they might be sellers. They might get rid of Bieber. They're not going to sign him, and then they've got the next guy up, and that's it. And they traded away Lindor to the Mets, and they got a young Jimenez, who was a postseason rock star last year, did very well, and a handful of other players that are potentially. So that's their formula. It's working for them. But if I'm a Cleveland Guardians fan, I'm waiting for them to sign. And I have to say they did sign Jose Ramirez. Okay, so they got their one guy. and he's pretty darn good.
Yeah,
So,
he's real good.
Pirates, though, they're just not as savvy, and their farm system is routinely really terrible. Think about who came out of that system. Garrett Cole came out of that system.
Pretty good.
Joe Musgrove, he plays for the Padres now. Pretty darn good now. They got good when they left Pittsburgh. For whatever reason, it's just not working.
Well, some of that could just be environment. When you're playing for a team that's perpetually bad, it's difficult to give your all. But I just want to say for everybody, when you say the AL Central is wide open, you mean it's mediocre, because the Red Sox are in last place in the AL East. They'd be in first place in the AL Central, and
Exactly.
wide open is a nice way to say they're mediocre. Now, we talked about these short windows of winning, and you mentioned a couple times about a lot of guys leaving clubs. So July 31st, I believe, is the non-waiver trade deadline, right? I think that's the one everybody focuses on because you don't have to clear waivers first. And that's for anybody listening who isn't familiar with some of the lingo. But I think it's July 31st is usually the date that everybody pencils in for the trade deadline in baseball. And that's coming up. I mean, it's June 21st. So teams are thinking about that now and possibly trying to get ahead without having to overpay as you get closer to that deadline. So in your mind, who are some buyers and who are some sellers as of today?
This, like I mentioned earlier, this year has been really a roller coaster, and the most interesting teams that it comes down to are the teams that kind of weren't expecting to be in the mix, and now they are. So the Diamondbacks are in the first place in the NL West. If you look at their lineup and if you look at their rotation, it's good, but it's got some pieces where it could be better. If I'm a Diamondbacks front office person, I'm going out and getting somebody. They've got Zach Gallen, they've got Gurriel. I can't even tell you who's on their lineup. I mean, there's no real stars on the team, but they're getting it done with the young talent that they have. The Reds are another interesting team where they've got a roster full of young players. They're in first place. They've won, I think, 11 straight
as of today. Yes,
and they're and the Pirates we talked about were a month ago. So if you turn your head for 2 weeks, not pay attention, look back at the standings, all of a sudden it's a different story. So what that tells me is you're going to have what we talk about today. It's going to go right up to the wire. The Reds could be completely out of it. I love the Reds. They're a great feel-good story this year. Fun team to watch. It's just going to depend on if they can make it to that July 31st deadline.
The grind is hard, and we talked about that last time, about the COVID-shortened season allowed teams like the Marlins to have a shorter sample size. It was like a sprint rather than a marathon. And we're still only 2 months into the season, man. Like, we still got 3 months to go before the playoffs start. But any sellers that you are just 100% clear sellers as of right now, and not the Oakland A's, because I don't think there's anybody that anybody wants?
The clear sellers are going to be the teams that are, I think, in the basement of their respective divisions. Colorado, Kansas City. The White Sox have a ton of talent that's available and going toward free agency. I feel like the whole team is available. Tim Anderson, Lance Lynn, a couple other pitchers. Yasmani Grandal, the catcher.
What about Moncada?
I'm not sure about Moncada's contract, but yeah, he's a player that just never panned out. Huge young talent, hype, lots of hype.
Yep.
Didn't ever pan out.
Everybody was like, how could you trade this guy? And I'm like, you don't know.
The Cardinals might be sellers. But the interesting thing is last year, the Orioles, who their record was awful. It came to the trade deadline, and they were sellers. I think the team was starting to gel a little bit. They were starting to show, but the ownership decided, hey, we're going to still get rid of or sell Mancini. They did. Mancini went to Houston, and they got some talent back from him. And the Orioles responded. They actually performed better after they became sellers, and it became a question of, hey, could we have done better if they're buyers? Fast forward to this year, now the Orioles are in second place. They've been legit all year, and it would be a shock to me if they didn't make the playoffs. They're one of the most exciting teams to watch right now. And yes, absolutely, they're going to be buyers. I mean, they're an exciting team. So it's really interesting to see the buying and selling decision. It doesn't always mean if you're a seller, you could do a little addition by subtraction. You're actually improving your team by getting rid of somebody that's not contributing very much.
I firmly believe in that, and I think that it's not done enough where you just kind of get rid of a guy, and it's I don't want to say a locker room cancer, because it's not always that, but it's sometimes a guy who maybe isn't fitting into. You could have 8 guys in a lineup who are all killing it, and this one person just doesn't fit that mold. But when I look at the standings,
Bryce
I think
Harper?
about, well, no, they went to a World Series last year. That's hard to say, and he got hurt. I mean,
No. For the Nationals.
the Nationals. I was like,
When he left,
the
they
Phillies.
actually won the World Series.
They did. I mean, and some of that, again, maybe was a fit thing. But I look at the standings right now, and you talked about the Reds. I look at the Marlins. These are teams, I think, that aren't usually where they are at this point in the season. And the trade deadline is a really, really scary proposition for them, because can they get to July 31st? And the scary proposition, if you're a fan, is what if they do? Because now they have a choice to make. They either stand pat and say, this isn't our year. We're going to see what we have and hope that we can get better next year with all this experience that we're gaining, or they get aggressive. And it brings back Cliff Floyd to the Expos, like I mentioned last time, where it's like you go all in. If you don't make it and the team falters, it's basically back to rebuild again. That's the scary part about the trade deadline.
It is scary, yeah. And you mentioned it earlier on the show. If you're a small market team, that window is smaller. The window for rebuilding, the window for championship is smaller. The Marlins have done it twice in the past 20 years.
Now, they bought one of them because they had a lot of talent, I think, on the 97 team. And then the next one was the real aberration, because they had a young Miguel Cabrera, a young Josh Beckett, tons of young talent on that team. And that came out of nowhere. I mean, they beat a Yankees dynasty at that point. And that was just incredible. I think even the Marlins execs wouldn't have told you that they thought they had a chance that year. And honestly, it was one of the most fun World Series runs to watch, if I'm being honest.
It was. Yeah, it was, just because it was so unpredictable.
Yes.
And their run this year is extremely unpredictable. No one could have told me that the Marlins would be in second place this year and becoming buyers this year. And it does happen, but you're right. When they take that free agent splash, it's a big risk. I mentioned Tim Anderson. I couldn't tell you if the Marlins are in the market for a shortstop, but Tim Anderson has had a great young and short career for the White Sox. He injured his ankle this year. He had a great start, injured his ankle, and then he just hasn't been the same. He's going to be a free agent. Do I actually want to take a risk on this guy, and how much am I willing to part with? And is it going to be, do you just rent the guy for the rest of the season? Maybe that's a little bit lower risk.
Yeah. But also, maybe you take that risk and hope that, okay, you've produced enough here, but you can sign them. I don't want to say on the cheap, because nothing's cheap in baseball anymore, but you get a guy like him maybe for that quote unquote hometown discount, instead of hitting the big free agent contract that a guy like him a couple years ago, if that trajectory continued, he might have actually been in line for not an Aaron Judge type contract, but pretty big numbers for a guy like him. You get a young shortstop who can produce, that's always going to bring the dollars to the table. So if you're the Marlins, obviously the White Sox are not going to get rid of him for nothing, but he's a player, and I want to ask you about this too. He's always sort of had this weird relationship in Chicago. And it was the Tony La Russa thing, because Tony La Russa was an old man trying to coach young people completely out of touch.
That was a bad match.
It's a disaster.
Why did he go there?
It's funny because Buck Showalter is in New York right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this his second year with the team?
Second or third. I think it might be third, yeah.
So it's funny how that works, right? Because Buck Showalter comes in, they have a turnaround. They just lost their 40th game this year. Last year, they didn't lose it until much later in the season. And Buck Showalter doesn't get the same treatment, because I think Buck Showalter is an old guy, but has the ability to massage his old ways with younger players. I don't understand how anybody thought Tony La Russa was going to change one iota about anything that he did. And he didn't at all. They were successful in spite of him.
It was weird, too, because of the whole, he was a St. Louis Cardinals icon, legend.
Hall of Famer.
And then comes to the south side of Chicago. And the Cubs, they don't care for the Cardinals very much. So to make an understatement there. So it just wasn't a good mix, not to mention he was a little bit old. And he was coming off of a time when I think that, what year was that? Was that the year where he's coming off of his last year in St. Louis, won the World Series, and then left, and it was surprise hire at the White Sox. He could have, what I'm saying is he could have ended his career and just finished it with an exclamation point and been done.
I believe that he retired, was eligible for the Hall of Fame, made the Hall of Fame, and then the White Sox hired him. Like, that's how long it has been since Tony La Russa has been an active manager in the major leagues. And they hired him to navigate the ship of this super young and exciting team. Like, 2 years ago, the White Sox were exciting, and they never lived up to that potential because they had the wrong guy at the helm. And these are the types of decisions that these front offices make that don't make sense. But trade deadline stuff, and we talked about sustainability and rebuilding and all that stuff. The trade deadline to me comes with another unknown in the fact that a lot of times you're not trading guys straight up, right? You're not getting superstar for superstar. It's always the prospects, the minor league guys that are coming up. Those are always the biggest hang up in these deals when you hear about, oh, they didn't want to give up this guy, but they gave up this guy. And I find this to be, unless you know, right, there's not many guys that can't miss in the minor leagues. Like, you kind of know they have a trajectory, but you're not sure because so many things happen between getting drafted and making the major league club. Even Bryce Harper went to the major leagues. You've got to perform in the major league. So it's way different, right? It's not like in the NFL where you go straight to the team and you get your chance to produce. But I feel like they're like draft picks that haven't been drafted yet, where it's like, oh my gosh, they give up a 3rd round pick. How do you know that's going to even work out? Whereas these prospects, sometimes you kind of hope, like the single A guy. Oh, next big.
It's a lottery ticket,
yes.
A little bit, yeah.
But you're mostly paying that currency to get these guys in, and you're overpaying at the deadline because the teams that are sellers are selling to teams that they need this.
Do you want to talk about Ohtani yet?
I do.
Because now we can talk about, because the Angels, they don't just need a couple lottery tickets. They need an entire team of lottery tickets. I really hope that they get something for Ohtani because they are in trouble. They've actually performed better than I expected them to do this year. Mike Trout is having a very good year, but I think I saw on social media how he's having the one of the worst years of his career, which is still, he's on pace for like 35 home runs or more. He's doing well, but maybe not the Mike Trout that we're used to seeing. And he has a huge contract extension, but he's got no support in a team game.
Oh, this is so triggering for me. Listen, I need to tell you that Mike Trout has been my favorite baseball player since he burst onto the scene. Exciting to watch, plays the game, quote unquote, the right way. I mean, I don't say that as in if you're flashy, you're not playing it the right way, but there's something about him that gave me the feels of a guy that played 50, 60 years ago. Comes to the yard, does his job, does everything well. And the Angels are so frustrating because, and this is really triggering because you're at the trade deadline and you have 2 generational talents, right? I'm not overstating that when I say that. Mike Trout is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to walk into the Hall of Fame easily. Like, there's no debate. And anybody who thinks that, you're so full of shit. Sorry. But it's true. Ohtani, I understand a lot of people had hesitancy over whether his game was going to translate to the Americanized game, right? Because it happens. There are tons of guys. Okay, there's a large enough sample size. Daisuke Matsuzaka, I'm looking at you, who have come here and not lived up to the expectations.
Japanese players, particularly.
Yes, that's what I mean. Shohei Ohtani is not that. He has delivered, and he's changed the game. He's bringing people to the television screens to watch this guy, right? And he doesn't even have the kind of charisma that other guys have. He plays the game the same way that Mike Trout does. The Angels have had these 2 guys on the same team. They haven't just had these guys over the course of 20 years separated on the same team, and they can't even make the wild card. Do you know how frustrating that is to watch baseball and think no team has that much talent on their team at one time almost ever, and almost every team that's had it has won? This is it's offensive to baseball, and it's offensive to these guys. And I feel like Mike Trout has taken less and put up with so much more crap where he could have won a World Series. And I don't know if it's that he doesn't want it or what, but like, why? Why would you sit there through that mediocre crap? He has 9 postseason at-bats. 9!
And we got a little taste of it in the World Baseball Classic where he was actually playing in the championship game, where we're like, I've been waiting to see him in the spotlight in a big championship game for
They faced each other. It was one of the most exciting things to happen in baseball in like 20 years. And it delivered.
And Ohtani struck him out.
Yes.
And he never strikes out.
Ohtani played in every game in the World Baseball Classic and won his country the World Baseball Classic. And you have this guy and you've produced nothing. John, how does that happen? No, I'm serious. How does that happen?
It's kind of a weird thing. With the Japanese player coming over, like you mentioned, Daisuke. There's been a couple Japanese players that have come over where they don't exactly produce. I feel like Ohtani coming to the Angels was almost like testing the waters. Okay, it's a small market team. They all they had is Mike Trout, and they had a little bit of money. The owner's willing to spend. They haven't done a very good job. The rotation's not very good, even with Ohtani in the rotation. But it was.
He is the rotation.
I mean, it seems like it. But even so, like he's just not able to get it done. And you'll see wasted home runs. Trout hit a home run, they'll lose. Ohtani hits a home run, they lose. And they try. And we've never seen them in the postseason. It's really sad. They're playing on the West Coast, which makes it even more frustrating for us on the East Coast trying to watch these two generational players, and we can't do it. And I feel like I think we are going to see Ohtani win a World Series, but it's now is the time. He's proven that he can stick around in the U.S. market. I'm not sure what to say about Trout. I'm really sorry about that, man.
No, I agree. I was actually just thinking in my head that Ohtani still is ascending. Mike Trout is on the downward spiral in the way that he downward spirals. Like I wish that the end of my career could be 35 home runs and 100 RBI.
It's a travesty to see these guys have like Trout specifically is a little bit sad because I think everybody actually wants to see him perform in the postseason with a team around him, and he's actually celebrating and winning and doing something special in the postseason because that's where it really matters. And I'm not sure if we're going to ever see it. But let me tell you this. Okay, one more point about Mike Trout.
I need it.
I mean, he accepted that extension.
Of course.
The Angels have been poor performing for years, and he signed that contract. And said, yes, I'm going to sign with a team that is a poor performing team. Yes, it was a lot of money. Yes, it's nice to stick around on one team forever. But it wasn't it's not what the fans wanted to see at the end of the day.
I wonder, and this is a larger question, and if you are watching or listening, the number to give us your opinion on this is 703-718-6314. But Mike Trout's legacy, because baseball and sports in general, legacy matters. We both know, and a lot of people know, that Mike Trout is one of the greatest players to ever play. But I think that sticking around on a team that has been perpetually bad hurts his legacy, as much as it pains me to say that. I don't think in today's game guys get a pass anymore. Cal Ripken, Tony Gwynn, guys that stayed with their clubs a long time, they got a pass. Tony Gwynn eventually went to a World Series, right? So it's just different now. We as fans, and I say we, not necessarily us included in that, but we expect results. We expect these guys to want to win. And Mike Trout, as you said it, he signed on the dotted line, never asked for a trade, never got frustrated, openly frustrated. I have to question whether Mike Trout really cared about winning a World Series. And I'm not saying he has to, but if you're talking about long-lasting legacy, if Ohtani wins a World Series, he's going to have a better legacy than Mike Trout. 100%.
Ooh, that's a spicy one. Yeah, I agree with that. If Ohtani leaves and wins, he's going to end up having a greater... But it's almost unfair. I mean, that's because we all have heard Mike Trout is the best. He's breaking records. He's only 20, I don't know how old he is now, 25, but he was already on track to break every record there was, and now Ohtani's here, and they're the two best players of all time.
Yes,
they're
almost
on this team that's not performing, and yeah, I agree. I think Ohtani will end up being the better player.
I just feel like championships matter, and if you ask a lot of players in a lot of sports, what would you rather have, 5 less years of your career or 1 World Series? A lot of players would take the World Series or the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup. I mean, ask a guy like Calvin Johnson, played for the Lions his whole career. didn't win a thing, right? First ballot Hall of Famer, great receiver, didn't win a thing. Julian Edelman, nobody's going to remember him in 20 years, 3-time Super Bowl champion. I would much rather have that than anything else. And Mike Trout is going to be a Hall of Famer, and we're going to be sitting, you and I, 5 years after he's retired and he's at the Hall of Fame speech when hopefully we're doing the show from the Hall of Fame. We're going to ask ourselves that same question because he's running out of time to do that. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of teams are going to overpay to get him right now because he's the injury risk.
Well, yeah.
But if you're a team right now and you can give everything, you take your entire farm system, I will give it all. I'll have nobody in single A, double A, and triple A just to get Ohtani on my team. I would do it in a heartbeat.
Well, there it is. So if you're a Mets fan,
do it.
Go. And I mean, they've got the money they're willing to spend. They've got all of the farm system that I talked about earlier. They've got
do it.
Young players. Go ahead and trade it all for that one player.
Because if you're a big market team and you can take the risk of not only trading for him, but knowing that you have a chance to sign him, it's worth it. It's worth it just being in the discussion of, can you have this guy? There's not going to be a player like him to come around, maybe ever. And all these guys are going to try to do the two-way thing. It's different. There's something about the way he is doing it that is, it's breathtaking.
And he can play till he's 40. I think he can play beyond 40 if he wanted to.
It is set up for him to be just like, your son is going to have seen the greatest player to ever play. And you and I got to see some pretty damn good players growing up. Damn good players, right? Like you think about it's a veritable who's who of Hall of Famers that we got to watch from start to finish. And he's going to beat us anyway because the best player ever made is going to have played in his lifetime. And that's exciting, but also frustrating. But the Angels, right? So why can't they get it right is the larger question. What is it about the rest of the team that doesn't work? Because obviously they hit a home run with getting Trout in the first place, right? And then being able to pay for Ohtani. So the will is there, but what's up with they get Rendon, who stinks.
Rendon is bad. And he's also been injury prone. Remember Albert Pujols was pretty terrible for them, and they signed him for big money. I feel like every signing they have is bad. Is bad. There's a little bit of bad luck there, but they're not. I don't see them really developing anybody that's coming out and saying, "Oh, this guy's great," and then actually performs and hits the ground running. No, I don't see it.
Are they hoping, though, that these two guys will somehow carry the team and the franchise to bigger and better things? Is that what it is?
I think that is the hope. It's
a fool's hope.
It's a fool's hope. They're not going to be able to do it. They have proven that they can't do it for years and years and years. I don't know how they did win the World Series pre-Mike Trout. Where you actually remember the rally monkey back in 2002.
Barry Bonds and the Giants had the 3-2 lead.
And we literally haven't seen anything from that team since that year. And that's with Mike Trout. So I can't explain it.
In the time that they've won the World Series, the White Sox, the Cubs, and the Red Sox have all broken near 100 or surpassed 100-year streaks. So Angels fans, you've had the two best players in our lifetime and nothing. God, that is so frustrating.
So I just heard a stat that the Athletic polled 100 players in the MLB asking, where do you think Ohtani will land? What MLB team will he land with? And over 50%, the Los Angeles Dodgers, which is really nearby, has the money to spend, has the pedigree. He could win a World Series with the Dodgers.
Yes, there's probably a handful of teams he could win a World Series with. Like you insert him on a lot of these teams. Even if you insert him on the Red Sox right now, they probably would be a better club. Because they're, just above 500, and their pitching is their problem. So all of a sudden you put a guy in there who at least once every 5 games you can get a solid, consistent start out of. And, oh, by the way, he contributes with the bat too, so you get even added bonus of that. How many teams couldn't use that? I mean, really. Imagine if Ohtani played for the Marlins right now or the Reds. These are teams that are winning with less than what the Angels have.
Any team.
It's amazing. He'd look good in Phillies pinstripes, by the way. I just want to put that out there.
Oh yeah. I actually thought Mike Trout would look good at Phillies pinstripes a couple years ago before he signed with the Angels. I really wanted him.
He should have. And that was the thing, right? And that's where we come down to players today in free agency being that blessing and a curse. And Mike Trout could have and probably should have tested free agency because he might have been in a better situation. And I think he took the easy route by signing the extension. And maybe it's sort of the other thing about Mike Trout is maybe he was under the impression that they would do more, and they haven't done more. And so there's a trust factor for him, and there's something to be said about that. It seemed like I was really hard on Mike Trout for taking that deal and everything, but I hope everybody knows that like my respect for him as a baseball player, like my favorite Mike Trout stat before we move on to your segment, is in 4 straight All-Star games. He led off or played in the All-Star game, started the All-Star game 4 years in a row. I can't remember what years they were. But in each of those All-Star games, he had hit for the cycle over the course of those 4 years. So he had a single, double, triple, and a home run in his at-bats in 4 straight World Series, something like that. And I just remember it was like 2018, 2017 maybe, where he led off the World Series with a triple. And I'm like, my God, I love this guy. Like he leads off the All-Star game with a triple, which is like the most rare hit in all of the game. And you know what? Mike Trout just leads off the All-Star game.
The crazy part is how big he is of a player. He's so fast and he's so aggressive. Every time I see it, it kind of blows my mind. And he plays center field. I don't know if he still does.
Big regret, I did not go to see him play when they came around to the DC area, and I really should have. Boy, that was heated. I was a little bit emotional. So I think we need to take it back a little bit. So you're a big fantasy baseball guy.
Yeah, I am.
Admittedly, I am not. And so we have added a little bit of a segment here that I'm calling Jonesy's Fantasy Minute. It's going to be longer than a minute, folks, but it sounds catchy and it's great. So I want to open up the floor to you. First of all, I want you to plug your league because you've told me about this league and we're all about that kind of personal connection. So take some time out to talk about that. Some of the top players right now, whether they're on your team or not. Some potential pickups for the summer, maybe. This is not gambling advice. This is just your personal opinion of, hey, this guy's really killing it. Might be a great addition if you need a bench guy. And then any fun tidbits that you might have about fantasy baseball, because I know next to nothing about it because it's been so long since I've done it. So Jonesy's Fantasy Minute, it is yours, my friend.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I do have to plug my fantasy league. It is Howdy Hooker Baseball, which I've been a part of for about 10 years. The name actually, I don't believe it means anything. It's just kind of a catchy, it's just a kind of catchy inside joke. But yeah, I've been playing for many, many years. It keeps me engaged in the sport. It keeps me having a sense of ownership and players so I can kind of spread my baseball love all over the league, follow certain aspects of the game. But it also allows me to kind of crack the code on winning myself, which is a little bit, I mean, the whole concept is a bit nerdy, geeky, whatever you want to say, but it's a hobby. It's fun, and it does allow me to try to be a baseball manager in some respects. So the key to my love of the game is keeping the league interesting. We have a great league with a lot of baseball knowledge in our league, and we have kind of unique categories we play with. So there's a lot of different ways to play fantasy baseball. The way that we play is 7 batting categories, 7 pitching categories. We instead of saves, we use saves plus holds, which we believe is kind of the save has been going away a little bit more in recent years as baseball's evolved. We use other pitching stats like strikeout per walk as a ratio for a category, which I think is a lot of fun and a telling metric in a pitcher. Also, strikeout per 9 innings instead of just counting stats of strikeouts, where you can plug in a player continuously and just rack up strikeouts. So it makes you think. It's a little bit more strategic. So it's catered toward a smarter way to play instead of catered toward, hey, the person that pays attention the most is actually going to win, which I like. So you can kind of plug guys in as you go. If you're not paying attention for a week, you're not going to lose. You just plug in your daily guy. So we play a daily lineup. We play a 22-week season. It's a 10-team league, which keeps it fun. My players, I had a really rough start this year. My players, I love Matt Olson. I've been drafting Matt Olson for years and might continue to do so. And he's having a heck of a year. He's mashing this year, which is a lot of fun. I hate that he's on the Braves, but hey, I've been drafting him since he's been Oakland. I like the player. Adolis Garcia with the Rangers, very, very talented young player. outfielder, and he's one of the main reasons why the Rangers are so good this year. Love Adolis Garcia, and the other player, Fernando Tatis. I drafted him last year, kept him this year. Last year was an absolute train wreck because he was injured, couldn't get back, then got nailed for taking some kind of steroid cream, got in a motorcycle accident prior to the season. That's why he required surgery. It was a complete mess. And the Padres couldn't have been happy about that either. But this year came back, and he's been absolutely crushing. You got to love that. And speaking of the Padres, that's a story in itself. They are just collapsing right now. That division is looking really good for teams like the Diamondbacks, the Giants, and the Dodgers, and the Padres. Can they make it back? That's really going to be a story this year.
Padres and Mets spent the most money of everybody. Not too much to show for it. So
no,
there's that.
It's been exactly that's the fun of the sport. And the last player that I love, again, on a team that I just do not like, the Houston Astros, but I do have Framber Valdez, who is absolutely zoned in this year as a pitcher. And so I'm in the middle of the pack. I'm having a good time with it. Top players of the year, number one, Ronald Acuna. With the Braves, my boy. Actually, I drafted him when he was a rookie and traded him for, I feel like, peanuts. Ended up losing that year, and then the guy I traded him actually kept him for years and years, and it was so sad. Yeah, I kind of became well known for bad trades for a while. The one surprise, I guess, the biggest surprise I have to mention, because he's such an exciting player, is a rookie this year. He almost can guarantee he's going to win Rookie of the Year. Corbin Carroll with the Diamondbacks. Oh, he's a rookie, like I mentioned. Came into the league. Fantasy circles know about him. He would steal you a lot of bases, but not only that, he's crushing the ball for his size. You know, he doesn't have the high home run total, but absolutely just mashes the ball. If you can watch highlights of this guy, it's actually fantastic to watch. Check out Corbin Carroll. So yeah, I mean, I could probably talk for another 10 minutes about this topic, but I'll let that.
The fantasy minute, John. Like, let's just keep that in mind. But so what was it again? The Happy Hookers? No, it was
Howdy Hooker.
Happy Howdy. Well,
they might be happy.
Yeah, hopefully, right? I mean, that's the hope. Is it mixed gender? Is it just all dudes? Like
all guys?
All dudes. All right. Well, fellas, anytime you want to come on and talk fantasy baseball, this is obviously a forum for that. And if you guys shared this video, it'd make my day. So the fantasy minute is over. Well, I always had a little bit of a thing that I wanted to do. We did a play of the episode last time. I call it the play of the month, but that's assuming that we can get this every month. I don't want to overcommit. But you brought up a good play this week that's not even a play on the field. And it's the Oakland Athletics fans doing what they called a reverse boycott, in which, from what I understand, they decided we're going to stick it to the owners and spend a boatload of money and go to one game and show them that there are fans to be had here, only for the ownership to then donate all of that money to charity in what had to be like we overplayed our hand, and then the team has plummeted and lost 7 straight or 6 straight or something like that. And I think they are like 19-56 or whatever their record is. Do you think that actually worked?
It was kind of fun. It got people to the ballpark, which I think is always good. In Oakland, they've had poor attendance for years and years and years. They have a terrible stadium, which, you know, is the reason why I think the owner, they're getting a very good deal in Las Vegas. I think the fully funded stadium, it's gonna be a huge coliseum, as you know, and so that's what the owner's going for. Not only that, but geographically, Oakland is really close to San Francisco, and they have to compete with the Giants all the time. So it's just, I mean, it's kind of sad. I like Oakland. I always have. I liked when Matt Olson was on Oakland. Matt Chapman. They had some really good players. They competed. It's Billy Beane's team when he invented Moneyball. And I really like Oakland, but their attendance is poor. I liked the idea of the reverse boycott, and it did kind of work. They went on a little win streak there, but they went back to being mediocre. It was fun while it lasted. But yeah, like I said in the last show, Oakland ownership and managers and coaches really need to step up if they're going to move to Las Vegas. They really need to show that they deserve the new stadium and the new team. So yeah, I liked the reverse boycott. I don't think it worked, but so be it. Some of the fans wanted to keep their team there. They didn't. I don't think they showed up very well this week. So
it's funny. Last week on Iceman and Coach, the main show, Coach kind of went in on that a little bit and said, I think it was since 2000 they've made the playoffs more than 50% of the time. And so if your team is making the playoffs at a 50% or more clip and you're not showing up, then what are they supposed to do? Now, ownership, honestly, has a lot of its faults, and we know that. But the fans not coming to the games is going to always be the thing that ownership points to when they want to do something or they don't spend money. And you have to show up, even if the team is bad. That's how you really show up. Consistently show up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know what I'm talking about, though? Like, ownership's always going to point to that.
Winning is always going to put...
Of course it is.
People in the seats.
It is. But there are a lot of franchises over all of sports. Detroit Lions fans, Cleveland Brown fans, Buffalo Bills fans, they still show up whether the team is good or not, And then you reward those fans with winning. And that's kind of what I think would have helped that situation. But it is what it is. The ship has sailed. They'll be in Vegas. However, I will say this. There's a lot of pressure on them now because the Golden Knights winning the Stanley Cup says, hey, we're only 6 years old and we just won our biggest prize. So you can't come here and be terrible. Like, they've set that bar very, very high. And it will be interesting to see how that works out. I'll be interested more in the name of the team, the uniforms, and all that stuff. So something for us to watch. So this is another I&C Sports thing. We got other things going with the Cornerman, obviously, which is a boxing thing. Reading the Defense, which is some football. That's with my brother-in-law, Mike. We're putting that out a little bit later in this week, whenever this is coming out. And then, of course, we have the Iceman and Coach main show, which we do every single week with Coach. Now, we're not always available because we have lives and kids and all that. So that's why we have little things like this to fill the gap and have some other fun personalities coming in. So just support all of that stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Do not forget to call in, whether you're listening or watching. 703-718-6314 is the number to give us your takes. Make sure that you let us know where you're from. We'd love to read some of these things on the air. We've gotten some interesting text messages when we've gotten things wrong. So positive and negative vibes are always welcome. Social media, Twitter and Instagram at Iceman and Coach is the handle on both Instagram and Twitter, of course. Matty Ice Media Network. Don't forget to visit MattyIceMedia.com to find this show, Iceman and Coach, Fire Footwear, Political Football, all the other things that we got going on. John, it was great to have you in the studio. Do you have any parting thoughts for our loyal fans?
I'm so glad that you had me back. That's all I have, but I have to say, that's baseball, baby.
And there you go. This is Flashing the Leather. The opinions and viewpoints expressed on I&C Sports are those of Matt Freitz, Brad Powell, and their guests, and not necessarily those of the Matty Ice Media Network. I&C Sports is exclusively owned by Matt Freitz and Brad Powell and is brought to you by the Matty Ice Media Network.